Hello, this is going to be a crash course about AP Literature's Unit 2 Plan and Resources. Unit 2 is The Great Gatsby, and really good news, kids love Gatsby. They love talking about the American dream, and they've talked about it before with Of Mice and Men, for example. They love the idea of Gatsby and Daisy and Tom and the love triangle. They love talking about the ridiculousness of people with money. It's just a great unit. Students really like it. So, total honest moment here, spirit of transparency. I have done almost nothing to update this unit plan. It's awesome. It's thorough. Once upon a time, I wrote it and rewrote it, and then last year simply revised it. So this has gone through quite a number of renditions and revisions, and I think that it's pretty solid. Of course, it needs to be tailored to meet the needs of the students in your class, so please do make note of that and set some time aside for that. What is important in this unit is really cementing students' knowledge in prose analysis and the Q3 or open-ended essay. Prose should have been firmly established in Unit 1, and this unit also folds in the Q3 or the open-ended essay. Of course, there's still a focus on multiple choice in this unit, but like I said, it's really writing heavy. The common assessment, of course, will ask students to do all 3 of the essays, but we're not going to explicitly study poetry until we get to Macbeth, and that's okay. You can do a little bit of review of it and practice with it during this unit, but the focus should be on prose and then especially on Q3. So I want to make a note of this place on the unit plan where it says the best place for you to prepare for this unit is to, of course, rereading Gatsby. I don't know if an American kid can make it out of high school without having read Gatsby, but if you're like me, my first year of teaching it was the first time I had looked at it since my sophomore year of high school. So please do reread it. And if you'll note, there's an annotated version in Dropbox. Go back to Unit 2. In Dropbox here, The Great Gatsby annotated, and it's just right inside the Unit 2 folder. So that might be helpful for you. I also really heartily encourage you to take a look at some literary criticism. There is a ton out there, of course, to sift through, and you don't need to go through all of it, but in case in the recesses of your memory is something about the green light and something about time stopping and you can't repeat the past and you can't quite remember, it's going to be so beneficial to your students if you can help them understand moments like that. So if you want to get started, there's within the Unit 2 folder in Dropbox, there's a folder called Lit Crit, Context Reading, and Thematically Linked Poems. So there's a whole folder of Lit Crit. Now, these are all pulled from high school level literary criticism by a publisher called Greenhaven Press, but maybe you want to consider the American ethics and values at play in the book, or there's a article about careless driving, etc. So take a look at some of those. I also make note later on in this unit plan of other places you can go to find really great resources. Lastly, I'm going to recommend you write your own Q3 essay to sort through your thoughts. And best case is when you give students time to write a doubt Q3 when we start this unit, write one about Gatsby and really finalize your thoughts. You write while they write. Major skills of the unit, you really want to talk about the complexity of a character and hammer that home, which is helpful both for prose essay and for the Q3. Gatsby's not one-dimensional. He is not just lusting after Daisy. There's a lot going on there. In fact, he considers himself a son of God, according to one page of the book. So really dig in, and dig into Nick as well. There's some weird things happening with Nick. He's watching, he's observing, he's partaking, but judging. What's happening there? The relationship between character and setting is another prose prompt and Q3 prompt that comes up in a lot of different ways. We've seen a lot of Q3s in the very recent past about settings. Physical surroundings was one example where students really need to understand how the Valley of Ashes, or the corruption of East and West Egg, or the difference between East and West Egg, manifests in some really interesting things happening with character. Point of view is something that comes up in multiple choice and the free response. And then, of course, you can't talk about Gatsby without talking about imagery and symbols and the green light, the clock, all of those beautiful, wonderful moments, Gatsby's yellow car, the fact that Gatsby dies in a pool of water, and it's his weird anti-rebirth and anti-baptism, and Daisy always dresses in white, and her name is Daisy, and oh my god, her name is a symbol, and all of the things, and it's so exciting. One other thing to really hone in on in this unit is exploding the moment. Helpful for prose, crucial for Q3. Students like to generalize, I say, while generalizing. It is crucial that they don't just say, Gatsby is wealthy, he has a big house, but that they're honing in on lovely Fitzgerald-tastic details of the text, like the juicer who gets paid to juice 2,500 oranges a day as a manifestation of his sumptuous life, and not just the word sumptuous because they know it. I also really recommend that you use this unit as a time to empower student voice. I like to set aside potentially a whole week to talk about the American dream and make it more meaningful to students. The wealth of the 1920s Long Island is not something I can relate to. I don't think it's something our students can relate to, but the American dream, absolutely something that is. So I'm actually going to do a new project this year. I think I'm going to send students on a Gatsby scavenger hunt of Houston and have them create school-only Instagram accounts and do a photo tour of, what does Upper Kirby look like, and what does the Ship Channel look like, and what does your neighborhood look like, and what is the disparity of wealth in our own city, let alone in this book that we're reading about. So that'll help students grasp on, yes, to the relationship between character and setting, but also the real-world manifestation of that. Students should read the book in its entirety before this unit begins. So really, as soon as possible, get Gatsby in kids' hands and have them reading it for the literal and understanding for the literal. There are major things happening in this unit, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute. When you scroll down, way down, there is going to be a cumulative unit test. There's also a Q3 process paper. That's why I'm really hammering this Q3 process so hard. A really smart, awesome, amazing, probably with more time on their hands than you do or I do, teacher is going to look at both the multiple choice and free response portion of the unit exams, again, available to you right here in the Dropbox, and the topics for the long Q3 process paper in advance of this unit. In fact, I might even plant the topics for the paper in students' hands on the very first day of the unit so that they're thinking about it the entire time that you're discussing and working towards it and taking notes. Scrolling back up, this is the American dream attainable, or how has it changed over the last 400 years, as unit essential questions have worked really well for me, but you might have ones that work better for the students in your class, and I really encourage you to make the unit essential questions your own. This little blurb here about The Great Gatsby is my attempt to come to terms with what I want students to understand and walk away with, thinking about understandings and misunderstandings, and I recommend that you just give that a quick read. This is another place you can look to find some resources that are going to be helpful as you're digesting this book to teach to students, and those resources are great. The Houston Central Public Library, the one downtown, is absolutely amazing. They have shelves and shelves and shelves and shelves of Gatsby-specific books. Also, reminder, we have a lovely subscription to EBSCO for our system. Username, yes, password prep, and you can log in and get a ton of criticism, including probably those articles. When you give students the books to read, you can let them know that there is an audiobook. It's unabridged. You can pay for a quality one. There's also free ones on YouTube. It's never a bad idea to give that to students. They can listen to it on the bus while they follow along. It's a great use of their time. There's also 1,075,000 supplemental readings you can give to students during this unit. Nothing Gold Can Stay pairs beautifully with this book and is basically the theme of all poems and readings for the rest of the year, as my students like to tell you. So that's a great place to start. I also really like to give students this nonfiction article, Daily Life in the United States, 20 to 40. It's so helpful at paving the way for understanding this time period. And once again, that can be found in the same folder, but in the nonfiction articles section. Overview of the 1920s, or Daily Life in the 1920s. A couple other notes about this unit. There are tons of outputs, vocab quizzes, Socratics, Gatsby, applied practice, etc. And those, again, can all be found here, except the vocab, which is in its own folder, but there's multiple choice applied practice. There's some other cold ones if you want to use those while prepping for the common assessment, but the applied practice is a great place to hone in. In addition, students should be allowed to rewrite papers during this unit from the first unit. In fact, I actually like to not enter paper grades in the 6 weeks that we wrote them in, but in the next 6 weeks. So it'll be, my doubt papers will be the kind of one of the grades in the second 6 weeks rather than the first 6 weeks, so that students have the opportunity to continuously revise, and I'm not trying to go back and change grades from a different 6 weeks. This calendar has not been updated at all. Truth, sorry about that, but the same function applies. I'm going to spend a whole week talking about the Q3 and workshopping it with doubt, and that is going to start with this very critical folder, Writing Prompts, Lessons, and Models, and this article, long resource thing called How to Write the Open-Ended Essay on the AP exam. I have personally scored the Q3 4 times in a row for College Board, and this is my best attempt to just dump everything on the page about how to be successful in the Q3, and this is how to start the Gatsby unit, is just thinking about this new genre for students. Now, it's not entirely new. They have written this Q3 essay in English 1 and English 2, but not in a timed setting. So it was their end of year writing in English 1 and English 2. So don't start from scratch. I actually give this article, this whole packet, and I send it home flipped classroom style for students. Expectation, you will read this thoroughly and completely and bring this back to me for a grade of how successfully did you self-teach this information. And I would give them a few days to do that. But you can definitely send it home and start there. Now, please note that this whole unit is based in lots of Q3 and/or prose writings about Gatsby, and there's a ton of prompts all ready to go for you. There's model essays, there's prompts, there's differentiated reflection activities based on how students did. There's also, there's a whole folder full of model essays, and there's also lessons. So if students didn't do so great on symbol, I really liked this particular resource about going back through, thinking through the myriad bajillion ways you could have talked about the symbol of the eyes of T.J. Eichelberg watching over you. So take a look through what's in there for that first week where you're honing in on the Q3. In my class, the second week is the Introduction to the American Dream. And in the background of those 2 weeks, students are, again, reading and thinking about Gatsby and processing it on their own. So that weeks 3 and 4, we are hitting the ground running and discussing. Students own the discussion of these chapters. They sign up for chapters to own, and they will lead the discussions for this. Totally student empowered, which is just so important. Spending 1 week on the first half of the book and 1 week on the second half of the book. Then that leaves you still a full week of flex for, oh my gosh, I ran out of time, and working on their essays in class and coming to conclusions and having debates perhaps. And then lastly, the next week or the last week of the 6 weeks will be the common assessment. That was really fast, but I